don't want you, we don't want to go.
They grow paper.
We're already,
Oh, you got it. You're in charge.
it's time, yeah.
Okay, well, yeah.
I didn't want to just shock you with the gavel. All right, I call the September 9th, 2024 meeting of the Harris Township Board of Supervisors to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, before we get started, I'd just like to make one announcement. Our manager, Mark Focal, is not in the room right now because he was positive for COVID on Friday. He is in his office zooming in. We thought it would be more prudent for him not to be here in person. So, anyway, first thing is a public hearing on proposed ordinance number 369, amending Chapter 12 zoning to provide standards related to properties with non-conforming amounts of parking. You gonna read that, Todd, or do you want me to read it?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, thank you.
On April 17th of last year, the Board of Supervisors and Planning Commission held a joint meeting to discuss the recommendations of the Village Parking Committee. The committee had provided a number of recommendations to the board in a 2022 final report. During this discussion, the board asked the Planning Commission to look for a short-term solution to address properties in the village that have no ability to provide off-street parking. After considering possible ways to address the issue, the Planning Commission prepared regulations that would allow for the registration of non-conforming amounts of parking. Although initially intended to address properties in the Village District, the proposed regulations would apply to any property with a legally established use or uses that lacks adequate parking to meet current parking requirements. Once a non-conforming amount of parking is registered, the use of the property could be changed by a current or subsequent owner, so long as the amount of required parking does not increase. Unlike other registered nonconformities, the degree of nonconformity would not change if subsequent uses required less parking. For example, a legally established 2,000 square foot retail use will be required to have 8 parking spaces per the current ordinances. If the property has no ability to provide parking, off-street parking, a nonconformity of 8 spaces could be registered. The use of the property could be changed in the future so long as the amount of parking required does not exceed 8 spaces. If the amount of required parking for the new use or uses does exceed 8 spaces, the owner would need to provide the difference between the requirement and the registered nonconformity. The ordinance provides provisions to address potential expansion of a use or uses on a property. The ordinance also specifies that a non-conforming amount of parking cannot be registered until the ability to provide on-site parking has been exhausted. If a property owner could potentially provide parking on-site, they could not register the remaining non-conformity until that parking was provided.
Okay, so members of the public are invited to come and speak to this. If you want to, please introduce yourself, and please try to keep it to 5 minutes because we do have kind of a busy agenda. Anyone?
Actually,
Yes.
hi, everyone. Robin Browse. I was on the original parking committee from 2021. Just my only question would be, like, if somebody came in and had the change of use, like, are they going to get guidance or just the ordinance handed to them so they know, like, where do I go? What do I do? What's nonconformity and things like that? Just, is there a plan in place for that to provide that assistance to those individuals when they're considering making a purchase of a property? Like, you know what I mean? If there's a change in that, like, how long might that take them? And then they might walk away from that purchase. So I didn't know if there was anything established yet in that regard.
Not technically, but township staff is always
Okay.
available to answer questions.
Okay.
That's what their ability.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Is it the same issue that I was having? You have a 2,000 square foot property here that's an office, a 2,000 square foot property here that's retail. You've got less needs of the office over here, so that they
Okay.
can register their office, right? But you
Right.
can't go up in parking. And you've got this, say it's a cafe, you've got a cafe over here.
Right.
Pretty much the maximum amount of parking that you need. So this 2,000 square foot property can do anything.
Okay.
And this 2,000 square foot property can virtually do nothing. Which one are you gonna buy?
The one that does anything.
The one that does anything. And this is
Yeah.
the problem I have with this, because there's no way, we have not given people any way to provide, like, having shared parking.
Right.
or
What are
anything
their
like that.
resolution
What is the
option?
resolution of this person over here who's got an office and wants to sell it and can't sell it because this person has got this cafe, and this is the preferable property.
Yeah, that was my,
Was that kind
one of
of
my
what you were
questions.
asking?
Yeah, thank
Thank
you
you.
for summing it up, Tracy. It was more like,
And on the parking committee, what was the first recommendation we had on the parking committee? That we
Was
spent
the
a year on? Was what? Was shared parking.
shared parking. So
Thank
that's
you.
just my concern about somebody that's looking at it. yes, they can ask the questions, but do they have options of where to look for those types of things?
And also personally, on a personal note, do you feel ignored? Because I certainly do, sitting on that committee, I feel completely ignored.
Well, it would have been nice to be a part of the discussion, but we have the ordinance now, but I'm just curious about that, so that's my only, go ahead.
One more question. Did you note that when we originally voted to bring this to a public hearing, that I said that I would be okay with this if it had a shared parking clause in it? It's a temporary solution that's not a temporary solution.
Right. I'm just thinking longer
I was just
term
wondering,
when
okay.
things turn over, so
Yeah.
that's my concern. I don't know if I have the answer to the question, but that's my concern. Thanks.
Anybody else like to speak on this
I'll make a
topic?
quick statement, I guess.
Oh, but, yeah, somebody else? Please. Bud Graham, Harris Township. The concern that I have is, we've been walking this for 3 or 4 years, and we have a great village district down there. And we start messing with it. We created this parking problem back in 2018 or 19 or something like this. And we included that in our parking regulations. And now we're trying to use it to regulate business, what business can or cannot be down there, what the mix is, whether it's local residents or it's businesses or establishments. I'm a little concerned because when you start messing with that, we got a village district that is unique probably anywhere else. And when the government steps in and starts working with it, it tends to cause a problem. So as you go through this, just remember that before 2008, for 100 years before that, we got along well. After World War II, when cars started to show up around here, it worked itself out well. So just be mindful that what you do here can affect the vibrancy of our shopping area, where people live, shop. This will affect them, and as you go through, it'll be interesting to hear a discussion when you go to vote on this. But just remember, we've got a unique situation down here. Let's not government step in and try to regulate it. We'll talk about that later, I'm sure. Thank you.
Anybody else on this topic? Okay. Entertain a motion to close this public hearing.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. Public hearing. Okay, now we have another public hearing on proposed ordinance 370, amending the stormwater management ordinance to be consistent with the Department of Environmental Protection's 2022 model stormwater management ordinance. Who wants to introduce that?
Harris Township is required by the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection to participate in the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System Program, which assigns Harris Township a permit and defines certain activities the township must perform to satisfy the permit requirements. Minimum control measure number 3 and best management practice number 5 requires the township to adopt an ordinance consistent with the DEP's 2022 Model Stormwater Management Ordinance prior to September 30th, 2024. Proposed ordinance number 370 includes necessary changes to the Stormwater Management Ordinance to achieve this consistency, as well as the consolidation of the Declaration of Stormwater Access and Maintenance Agreement, the DSAME, and the Operation and Maintenance Agreement, O&M, into one document to reduce redundancy.
All right, just stating, this is something the township, again, is required to do, and but I entertain any comments on this at this time. Okay, see.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Do I have a second there? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Regular meeting, first item is the approval of minutes from August 12th and a public hearing on August 12th, 2024.
I move to approve the minutes of the August 12, 2024 public hearing, August 12, 2024 regular meeting.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the minutes? Okay, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, unanimous. Next, we have time for citizen comments. Members of the public are invited to comment on any item not on the agenda, or 5 minutes per person limit, please. Comments relating to specific items on the agenda should be deferred until that point in the meeting. So again, please state your name and
Hello, I'm Karen Conroy on Academy Street. I just had a couple questions and then a comment pertaining to our speed humps and traffic calming. I know I have Roy Love forwarded me Mark's outline of the process, how this is going to go. And I was just wondering where you are on the process, how long do you think it's going to take? Is this a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year type of situation? I was just wondering.
Staff have an answer for that?
I can speak to that. You know, I'm hoping to have that policy finalized here for the board to take a look at it, hopefully either by next month or November at the latest. At that point, you know, if you wanted to move forward with adopting, I don't think it would be in place until sometime next year that it actually be used. And then there would be the process of actually having to go through the requests as they're submitted.
Okay. I was also wondering, would it be helpful to you all or to the process if we got a petition with people on board, names and addresses of people who are interested in having speed humps and having traffic calming? Or not really?
Certainly welcome to do so.
But I mean, is it helpful to the process? I'm not going to go out and do it if it's not helpful to the process.
It could be. I mean, you're trying to influence us five up here to do what you'd like, what you think is best for your neighborhood. So that may have an influence on one or all, some or all of us. Who knows?
Okay.
That's kind of a question you can't really answer.
Okay. And in general, do you know, I know no one has a crystal ball, but from start, which was the request, to finish, do you have any idea of a timeline? Years, months, lots of years, or no? No one has any idea?
No, we do not at this point.
I would need to hear what Mark has to say, what he's bringing for them, what we're reviewing before I can.
Okay. I just wondered. I mean, one of the comments when I originally came was keep coming to the meetings and keep asking questions. So
Please do come.
that's what I'm doing. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Bring your dog.
Is there anybody else in attendance who would like to speak to something not on the agenda? Okay. New agenda items, Act 65 requires the posting of agendas on Township website 24 hours before a meeting. Only emergency or de minimis items for discussion only can be added to the agenda by a majority vote of the board. Any of the board members like to introduce a new agenda item? Nope. Okay. On to Township business. The first item is the request to amend the chicken ordinance.
Can we read it?
Please.
Neil and Cynthia Kellerman, who reside at 122 Memorial Drive, are requesting that the Board of Supervisors amend the chicken ordinance to permit the keeping of chicken hens in yard areas where they are currently prohibited. Several months ago, staff received complaints regarding a rooster being kept on the Kellerman's property. I responded to the complaints and found that a rooster was being kept on the Kellerman property and that there were 2 chicken coops located in the northeast corner of the lot adjacent to Memorial Drive. Because 122 Memorial Drive is a corner lot, the side yard adjacent to the street is technically the second front yard and must be a minimum of 20 feet deep. The current ordinance prohibits chicken coops and runs from being in a front or side yard. The Kellermans are no longer keeping chickens on the property. However, 1 coop remains in the yard adjacent to Memorial Drive. The Kellerman's written request was included with the agenda. The Board of Supervisors should discuss this request and provide direction to staff if there is an interest in considering amendments to the regulations. Kellermans are sitting here in the front row.
Okay. Any of the board want to comment on this first, or should I invite the public to comment on it?
We do have a packet of information for the first as well.
Yeah. We do. We all have a copy of this statement.
Additional information because we got a petition signed by neighbors and others in the neighborhood.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, if nobody else wants to start, I'll kind of take the lead on this. I did meet with the Kellermans on their property some weeks ago, and looked at the situation. The issue is, right now, the Memorial Drive side of the property is considered a front yard because it's a corner lot. We cannot consider it a side yard. There is opportunity to change an ordinance to allow side yard, which would allow a coop to be on the other side of the property. The property could easily, I mean, it would take a little grading, accommodate a chicken coop in the backyard, I believe, near the deck. It would, again, take a little grading, but unfortunately, I will just tell you this right offhand, from what our discussion has been, and the legal opinion is that, unfortunately, we can't use anything about disability ADA regulations for a situation like this. And basically the coop and run cannot be in the right of way, and if we were to allow it in the front yard, then it could be in a front yard of any dwelling in the entire township. And we can't singly take your property and do exactly what you'd like to do with it. So, do you have anything to add, Todd or Mark?
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
How is the house on the corner of Bowlesburg Pike and Harris Avenue, which has a garage that's about 20 feet, it's on a corner lot, it's about 20 feet in what would be considered a second front. It's about 20 feet from the road. How did that happen?
I think there are a lot of situations throughout the township where structures were built before the regulations were in
This is a
effect.
fairly new.
Please let me finish. A lot of times those things create non-conforming situations. Whenever there's a non-conformity on the property, that runs with the property. So there are situations where the non-conformity that was created before the regulations went into effect, and there wasn't any zoning in Harris Township until 1965. There were a lot of structures in the township prior to 1965. A lot of times the non-conformity that's established allows things like that to happen.
Well, I can tell you this is a fairly new, it's been built within the last 10 years, if not sooner than that.
Is that the difference between having a house versus the chicken coop by the ordinance as indicated it can't be in the front yard, and we have two fronts because of our corner lot?
Now, there shouldn't be any difference, and I can look into this particular one and give you a better answer on.
Because kind of a structure is a structure at that
Sure.
point.
Sure.
So, you know, if we wanted to, we could build onto the end of our house and still have 20 feet from the edge of the road to the back corner or the side of the house, which would be the front. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you could build onto your house so long as, your house, to my recollection, your house currently observes all the applicable setbacks, building setbacks that are required. If you wanted to build onto your house, you could certainly do that. And if you have any room left to the front setback on either side, you could add in that direction, but you could not exceed what the setback is. You'd have to stay out of building.
It has to be within
Yeah.
that setback.
Right,
Which is what, the 25-foot right-of-way plus 20 feet?
plus the 20 feet of the front setback, yeah.
That's what we're saying,
Yeah.
but that house is only 20 feet.
Yeah, I mean, where does the extra 20 come in? Because I know you mentioned that when Cindy and I met.
Hear them now, if you could get up there. Yeah, there is no really extra 20.
If the right-of-way is 25 feet from the center of the road, I would assume you measure from the center, 25 feet is the end. You can't build beyond that, nothing.
Well, no, you can. Where the difference between the setback and the right-of-way is, the right-of-way is the area owned by the township, or if it's, in the case of a state road, it's owned by the state, that is reserved for the cartway, the berms, and any utilities that have to be within that right-of-way. The setback is the distance from in this case, the edge of the right-of-way or on the side and rear from your neighbor's property lines. That's the additional distance that you have to stay away from those property lines in order to build structures. So effectively, on your street, for new structures, the closest you can build in the front is 45 feet from the center line. That's half of that 50-foot right-of-way, which is 25 feet, plus the 20-foot front setback.
Right.
Which is what we're saying, because that house is about 20 feet from the
There's no
road.
way it's 45. No
It's
way.
about 25 feet from the center of the road.
Yeah.
Well, the original house may be.
You know what house we're talking
Pre-zoned.
about, and it was
It's
not
across from
done.
Gingrich House.
It's not.
It was not done,
It was built in the last, probably 10 years.
yeah.
Jim Gingrich's house on the corner. It's the other one on the corner that's facing, well, it's on Willisburg Pike and one on
Harris.
Side Street is.
Yes, yeah.
Go look at it on your way home.
Fronting, and there's an apartment.
Do you know the address?
Garage.
I don't know the address. I know-
107, Bollesburg Pike and Harris
What
Avenue.
was that?
107.
Willisburg
There's-
Pike and Harris Avenue.
There's two garages.
There's a house facing the
Oh, I know the
Pike,
property you
and
mean.
then
And then
there's
there's two
a house
garages
on
that
the
face
other
Harris.
street.
Yeah.
There's only one, yeah. There's a garage and an apartment facing,
They would have had to go through zoning and building codes, so I can't imagine it could have slipped by as being too close.
Go
I
measure
mean,
it.
I remember when those were built, it was.
it's not that long ago.
Yeah, you kind of wonder how they shoehorned that in there, but I can't imagine it's not legitimate, and that would have, do you remember, you know the property we're talking about
Yeah,
now?
I think I do, and I'll get in the file tomorrow and I'll look it up and I'll email you what we have.
I mean, they park a car there and it just fits. I bet you any money Neil's truck, which is about 19 feet, would just fit in their driveway before hitting the street.
This on the Harris Avenue side?
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, just the house they're talking about really has no bearing on what happens here. It just, another place
True.
is not in conformity is a separate issue.
Well, I'm
We're
wondering-
talking about what's going on here.
Well, I'm
and
asking
that's what
how-
we have to discuss.
All right.
I'm asking
Thank
how
you.
a house can be done, but a coop that could be easily moved can't be done.
Well, we don't know that house is not in proper zoning requirements at this point. So that discussion is off the table. I understand. I get that. So, I mean, if the,
And I also have a question too, which this has kind of been, Amy, the previous township manager, walked by our house for the 5 years that we've had chickens and the year that we had a rooster, walked by our house pretty frequently with her dog, never said anything to us, obviously never said anything to you. So my question is, why did it take the township 5 years to realize that we were in non-conformity?
in my experience, I've been a longtime resident of this municipality, and it's a very friendly municipality. Complaints are what drives this kind of thing. So you had no complaints for the last 5 years, and from what I understand, you didn't get a permit for it in the first place, which is part of the ordinance, but that's, not part of the discussion. So nobody complained until the roosters showed up and disturbed people, and then somebody complained. My guess is nobody would have batted an eye if the roosters hadn't shown up, but once Todd investigates something, he has to
So it
act on
takes a
it.
complaint.
Pretty much. I mean, we don't go around policing. Todd's not out there with a tape measure, like driving around the township looking for things. He's not. That's not what we pay him to do. And so, again, enforcement's complaint driven. If nobody complains about something, unless it's an egregious issue, probably nothing's going to happen about it. So, we're unique in that respect. I think that's a little more friendly. It's unfortunate in your case that the roosters pointed out the issue by a complaint.
So we got rid of the rooster, so just pretend none of the other stuff.
Well, at this point, unfortunately, we can't pretend.
Well, I mean,
I
that's kind of what you're
understand,
saying. It's like, had we not had the roost, I don't know. It's
Yeah,
just-
no,
This whole situation is just weird. to
That's
me.
interesting to
get
know,
that.
it's kind of arbitrary.
no,
I
but
think the question here, from what I'm reading and all your information you gave us, what you're really asking us is, would we be interested or allow chicken coops in side yards?
Right.
That's pretty much what you're asking.
And
with all
because
this
ours
stuff.
is,
So, and, for every comment we get in this direction, we're gonna get one in this direction. So the only thing I would say is the best thing we could do with this is let the planning commission take a look at if we want to change the ordinance and allow chicken coops in the side yard.
Well-
Other than that, we can't.
Well,
yeah,
the
we
side
can't
yard's
pass an
not
ordinance.
Thing is that-
Side
We can't
yard's
pass
not
an
gonna
ordinance
help
for one
us.
property
Yeah,
because
no.
if we pass an ordinance, it's got to be for everybody in the township.
and
right.
if
So
you
the
don't,
only thing we could do is say, okay, look at it, planning commission, should we allow chicken coops in the side yards? And that's pretty much all we can do.
but
Right, all right.
the su-
One thing that's a problem here is the chicken regulations aren't in the zoning ordinance. So the planning commission has no standing to,
So this is something we've got to do?
this is something that,
sorry,
Well,
we
and the
can't.
side,
ask
and the
about
side
that.
yards,
Another 3 years.
If you make it just the side yard, that's not gonna help us out because
Right.
we have two fronts. And that's one thing that
Yeah.
was in that
Yeah.
proposed amendment.
that's why it's
to
1 and 2, not.
include that, which is not our true front, and maybe the chicken ordinance needs to maybe be rewritten so that, a true front of your house is a true front, even though you're on a corner.
We're getting dicey there. I don't know, see, the true front of the house, I don't want my neighbor across the street to put a chicken coop in front of their house.
I'm not
And-
saying that.
Right, but thing is, we can't differentiate. If the zoning, a lot of zoning regulations are driven by state law. In this case, so a front yard, am I correct in this? A front yard on a corner, a side yard on a corner lot has to be considered a front yard. We can't change that. And so it is a front yard. So if we allow chicken coops in any front yard, in your front yard, which happens to be your side, we have to allow it anywhere in anybody's front yard. Now, again, I took another quick look at your property after more recently, and I understand your concern, but it looks to me like you actually have room directly behind your little deck, and to put a coop and a decent run, you might have to do a little grading to give yourself a little bit more room, but that would give you the space you need to
And where is that?
look at your chicken.
Behind the house. basically.
Yeah, behind the house, behind the deck, isn't there a spot?
Which
Because
really
your ponds
defeats
are
the
next to
purpose.
the, pardon?
It really, for us, or for
With
me,
her.
defeats the purpose.
She can't get at it.
They're
Well,
my
you-
support animals
Yeah,
that I talk to during the day.
I know,
So,
yeah, okay,
I put a
yeah.
graphic on the screen just to help maybe illustrate the area of property that is on a corner of lot in this particular case. This is the front of the house facing the doorway.
Can you speak up a little more, Mark? You're not very loud.
My microphone is slightly covered for the other. Yeah, this graphic I put together shows the location of the front yard as well as the side and the rear yard on a corner lot. And I did use their property, but it would apply to any property on a corner. So everything is basically between the building and the street is considered the front yard. This is the side yard over here, and then this is the rear yard. Some people don't, because they don't have these two front yard scenarios, but this is typically treated just like a front yard here, but you have continuity up and down the street. You're going to have that same setback. At least 20 feet.
Scream, Mark. I can't hear you.
Still a little soft, but
I'm on deck.
Wow, I feel like I'm yelling.
Yeah,
Can you hear me now or not?
better.
Okay. So what I was saying is just that these two blue areas are the front yard, that this is going to be the same situation on any corner lot. You're going to have between the building and the right-of-way line, you're going to have that 20-foot space that's kind of reserved for no structures. This is the rear yard and the side yard. And I did use their property as an example, but this would work on any corner lot. So I just wanted to provide this to you, since that's really the request that's before you this evening, is whether or not you might consider changing the chicken ordinance to allow the coop to be in a different spot than they allow. Right now, they're only allowed in this green area in the back. That's what the current ordinance says. But they're asking to have it over here in this blue area. But as I mentioned, this is treated as a front yard because it maintains consistency throughout the entire, basically the entire neighborhood. You're going to have that same setback from the road, no matter where the front door is located. I just thought that would be helpful to maybe illustrate that.
I've got a question of Mark. The graphic that's in the packet you gave us. Do you have that graphic, Mark?
No.
I don't think,
The overhead shot?
No, I don't have anything they handed you this evening.
On the graphic you gave us, there's a penciled in section.
right, that's what we got from Todd, I don't know, a month ago, when Todd, us, and Mark met.
Can you relate that pencil section in the report? That little section right here. Is that part of this whole,
I think what we tried to do here is, since I don't work with technology very well, on the the county's website, I could only draw a rectangle, so I cut off the back of their house. I was trying to put on there, but you can see that it's an uneven back to their house. So it doesn't represent anything but the actual location of the house.
Okay. That was a point of confusion for me as to whether they were the same item or not, but they aren't.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're pretty much in agreement, we can't do case-by-case acceptance. So to me, the question on the table is, do we want to change the setback for chicken coops from 20 to 6 or some other number? And I would be hesitant to do that without gaining more input from our residents.
Well, we can't do it on the Memorial Drive side, it's just because it has to be 20 feet back, any structure, back from the edge of the right-of-way. And they're not interested in the side yard on the other side of the house, putting it there. But again, even in this one photo we have, you could see the chickens from your back deck if you had the coop out there. It may be obviously not as convenient for you to access them as your concern.
We can't. I mean, if we put it so that it's by the porch, then we're blocking all access.
Well, no, you can back it up a little bit from the, you wouldn't have to put it, you could even put it behind that tree, and you have the plantings, which I assume are the edge of your pond there. So there is enough flat space, and so it wouldn't be exactly adjacent, but I mean, basically, it doesn't look like there's anything we can really do.
No, it doesn't sound like there's anything.
At this point, because we can't touch that Memorial Drive side. There's nothing we can do with that.
Within that yellow section,
Right.
is that darker yellow, the coop?
No, that's our side yard.
That's a side, that's a shed. That's a
Oh,
shed.
okay, I was trying
The
to...
coop right now is on the blue side, because that's the only flat area in our yard.
The left blue or the top blue?
The green in the back is a steeper incline that, me having the disease I have, I can't access that. And where Nigel was talking about, I can't visually see them, and it's an area that I've had bad fall before.
I mean, we'd like to accommodate everybody with anything we can do, that's reasonable, but because of this issue with the front, and you don't want to put it on the other side where there's really no point in doing anything, and you have you have what options you have in your backyard, then I don't think we can do anything more for you.
Under the present ordinance.
Yeah,
Under the present ordinance.
pardon?
Under the present ordinance, you can't do it.
Right, but we can't, doesn't even matter, we can't touch no matter what we do, we can't touch a front yard and a front right, and a right-of-way on a, setback from a front yard. And that's my understanding, correct?
You can't change the right-of-way. If you were going to change the front setback, that would have to apply equally among all structures, I would think. So that would be, that would be something you would have to consider.
When you say all structures, you mean across the township?
Yeah, it would have to apply equally to all structures, I would think, yeah.
And that's the problem.
Yeah, and what makes corner lots a little bit exceptional too is, there's a sight distance triangle at the intersections that has to be observed, and if you start allowing structures further toward the road on corner lots particularly, and even on non-corner lots where driveways come out, that adds an additional layer of confusion or maybe blockage of sight for people pulling out of driveways.
Anybody else have anything?
Just one small comment.
Want to get to the mic, bud?
Our ordinance, any ordinance is is always not for everybody. We found that out. Ordinances, if you could look at the ordinance, look at something that would leave a little bit of discretion here. I think if you would, I don't know what would change in the ordinance, but I think there's got to be some ordinance or some wording that we can have some discretion on what you can do. In this particular situation, I know where it was. I drove by and didn't even notice it was there. It fits in very well where it's at. And I go across the street to a good friend of mine. I didn't even know there was any there until a rooster showed up. I'm with everybody else. I was in feet of that. As you drive by it, it fits in very well. You have to stop. So it's not obtrusive. It fits in very well. So there's got to be some way, wording an ordinance or wording something that something could be done. Any ordinance doesn't fit everybody. We found that out. So that's just something to think about in the discussion part.
I wasn't even going to comment on this, but I am anyway. And this is just me throwing out a thought, is there any way with mobile chicken tractors, which are chicken coops on wheels, that can be moved in the daytime so she can enjoy the chickens, and then at nighttime be put in the backyard? I don't know if that's just my comment.
No, we regulate runs, but we don't regulate chicken tractors.
No, we actually had that conversation when we were spending months and months discussing the chicken ordinance. Technically, the zoning ordinance says that when you get a zoning permit for something, if you change its location, you have to get another zoning permit. So actually having a chicken tractor that you move would be an issue as it relates to that. It would also be a policing issue because I'm sure there are people who would put the chicken coop back after they, were done viewing the chickens for the day or whatever, but there are people who wouldn't, in my experience. So that would be an additional concern for the township.
Again, I'm a little foggy on it. It's been quite some time, but so are chicken tractors even mentioned in that, or
No.
We don't even mention chicken tractors in the ordinance?
No, because technically when you move a structure, you're required to have a new zoning permit because there would be new setbacks.
All right.
Yeah. I do it here, I do.
Yeah, please go to the mic so get on tape.
Yeah, I have a couple questions if I may. I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. Is you're saying if nobody complains about
Could you
violation.
identify yourself, please?
Oh,
for
I'm
the
sorry,
record?
Dave Gackenbach.
Thank you.
If nobody identifies that there's, or complains about a problem, that's a violation, it's not investigated.
That's true for the most part.
What does that mean?
That means it's true for the most part.
So normally you just
if
don't
we-
go out looking for violations?
Well, we only have 3 full-time staff members, and I'm the only one who goes around and does ordinance enforcement, so I don't have a lot of time to do that. When I'm out doing something, if I notice a violation exists, I will do something about it, but most of our enforcement is done via complaint.
Okay. So it's kind of a haphazard violation.
I
Check
can
it.
give you
Those
an
are your
example
words.
about that, exactly.
Yeah.
We have a sign ordinance now. And I remember, I was coming down the road, and I couldn't believe the number of advertising signs, like all hammered to, do you remember the J&B roofing or something like that? And there was all these signs all over the place, and they're not allowed to be there. And if somebody doesn't say something, and he doesn't travel up the road where I live in Willowbrook, then what exactly are you going to do? Because he would be all over the township looking for this or that or whatever.
I'm not complaining about it.
No, I just.
I'm just getting the record straight. is what I'm
Like an
doing.
example that would just happen.
Okay.
So.
Fine. You mentioned the state law on the setbacks and the time, the distances and so on. Can I get the reference for that state law?
Well, the enabling legislation for zoning ordinance from the state of Pennsylvania is the municipalities planning code.
Okay. Any particular section I need to look at?
I don't know what it is offhand.
Mark, would you know that?
I believe it's chapter 6, it's the one that addresses zoning regulations in the municipality.
Chapter 6?
It's multi-page. Get ready to
I'm
read
sure
it.
it is. Nobody can be quick and direct. Is this chicken ordinance on a permanent structure?
Harris
Or
Township
temporary.
does not differentiate between permanent and temporary structures. A structure is a structure in Harris Township.
Okay, I guess that's all I got for now. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
I do have one other question. Todd, you had told us when we originally talked to you that there was a complaint. And then in your paperwork and what you've written up with these folks, you've stated complaints.
There were actually 2.
Like the same day?
No. Within a day or 2 of each other.
Same person?
No, 2 different people.
Who were they?
On the same issue? On the same issue?
All right.
Yes.
The rooster.
Yes.
Again, we'd like to be a friendly municipality, and if something doesn't bother the neighbors and it's not an egregious violation of any zoning, then usually nothing happens, because again, Todd's not out there looking for little teeny violations.
Well, I just find that very
And
incredible.
it is odd, because, I go up and down Memorial Drive, and I've never noticed, never even paid attention to that side of your yard.
Well, and I just
And
find that
chicken
incredible
coops.
because
Yeah.
everybody, except for one, who doesn't even yet live there, has asked us where our rooster is and is saying, when we come to this township meeting, tell them you want your rooster back. And we've said, I can guarantee you that won't happen. Possibly we'll get to bring the chickens back and where you guys can see them, but we'll never get the rooster. That we can guarantee you.
Yeah.
Yeah, just for everybody's, this, when do we enforce? We have no parking signs all over the township. How many of you seen our meter maid? It's because we don't have one. But if we don't put the signs up, when there is a problem, the police won't enforce it. So sometimes we have to do things proactively like that, so it's there when there is a problem. And that's simply what this ordinance came about, is because there was a problem and it had to be addressed. So, and what Nigel's saying is, you know, unless somebody comes out with a major issue, you know, we kind of live and let neighbors talk to neighbors and work things out amongst their neighbors. And when it comes to us, we've got to act. And that's pretty much what's going on here. I mean, like I said, we have no parking signs all over, but I know we don't have a meter maid. We tried to get Amy for years to put that uniform on and walk around. She wouldn't.
Well, I can tell you it's going to create a atmosphere of tattling is what it's going to create. Now that everybody knows that it's not enforced, because anyone that watches CNN now, or CNET now knows that.
I doubt that will happen. I really do.
Possibly.
Again, neighbors aren't looking at like, oh, your kid's playhouse is too close to the property line.
Well, I don't
I'm going to
think-
call and
I'm not
complain about
talking
that.
about that
I know,
kind of
but you know, that's the thing. If most people, if they get along with their neighbors in the majority of cases, and so little things like that. But unfortunately, in your case, you know, that could have gone on as non-conforming and, you know, non-registered forever if the rooster hadn't been there. And
Well, he
I'm
was there
sorry,
for a
you know, I'm
year,
sorry about
so
that,
it
but, you know, once a complaint comes in, Todd has no choice but to investigate. And if there is indeed a violation, we have to follow up on it. And now we're trying, you know, Mark and Todd work a lot. I mean, trying to figure out what could be done. And I sat in on that a little bit, and as you know, met with you, and really, this is, you know, we just can't do everything for everybody. And unfortunately, in your case, I don't think there's anything we can do to allow you to put the coop right where you want it.
Okay.
That seems to be the bottom line. So, unless anybody else on the board wants to make a comment, we should move on with our agenda, I think, at this point. So.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
All right, now where did I bury my agenda? Yeah. Oh, excuse me. No, what? Is that mine? Okay, we'll introduce the next one, okay. Next item is a request to support the preparation of a development of regional impact application for Tussey Mountain.
Josh Lincoln, the managing partner for Tussey Mountain, is requesting that the Board of Supervisors support the preparation of a development of regional impact, DRI, for Tussey Mountain to be added to the regional growth boundary and sewer service area. The property is 134.8 acres in size and is located adjacent to the boundaries. In the early 1900s, Tussey Mountain was connected to the public sewer system due to a failed on-lot system. This connection was provided with limitations and uses on the property, cannot be expanded without being formally brought into the regional growth boundary and sewer service area. Mr. Lincoln has indicated that the owners are interested in potential remodeling and expansion of the ski lodge to incorporate a conference and wedding venue, a bar and restaurant, and retail space. A copy of a draft concept plan for the property was included with the agenda. In order to construct additional improvements, the property would need to be within the regional growth boundary and sewer service area to permit additional public sewer connections and increased sewage flow. If the board is supportive of considering a DRI for the property, the applicant would need to prepare a DRI application which would be reviewed by the Center Regional Planning Agency for completeness prior to any formal municipal action. And once the DRI application is deemed complete, the Board of Supervisors could decide whether to support the request moving forward for regional consideration. A DRI of this magnitude must be approved by 5 of the 6 Center Region municipalities. The recommendation from staff is it's a discussion item. Mr. Lincoln's at the microphone, and I assume, John, you're here to, if necessary?
Yeah, so I'm Josh Lincoln. I'm one of the managing partners for Tussey Mountain Ski Area. I've been at it for about 2 years, and one of my goals, you know, in taking on this project was to revitalize Tussey Mountain. It was built in the 60s and has since dilapidated considerably. And so it's a great community resource. We teach about 1,300 kids a year to ski, mostly after-school ski programs. What you're seeing up here now is basically looking at the existing facility that's there and kind of building around it and expanding it, improving it in a multiple phased approach. We did come in and talk to the board before about a smaller project, but at the advice of the board, we wanted to show all of our potential concepts for the property built out into the future. And so not much has happened to Tussey since it was originally built, and so we really feel that it's time to update it to keep it going. It's a short winter, and so the one thing that we need to do with the climate that we have is to try to make it a year-round business more so. And so one of the big features to this would be to expand the ski lodge to include a bigger room to accommodate facility for conferences and weddings and things like that. In addition to expanding the retail space and basically repurposing the buildings that were there. We have a ski patrol, a race center, and also ski school that would also have new facilities as part of this plan. So looking at this plan, we have, this is the original concept of it, and we, would still need to look at all the considerations regarding stormwater and other things that would go along with it, but this is what we would like to do in time for the property. Not really changing the use, we would just be revitalizing what's there now and expanding upon it.
Go for it.
Yeah, I mean...
Interesting issue.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, just a quick question. There wouldn't be any zoning issues with this property. Is it zoned in the rural business or whatever we call that area?
I think part of the property is natural areas, and I don't remember, part of it might be agricultural, it might be, but we haven't really evaluated any zoning implications as it relates to this concept, since it is a concept at this point.
Right. So that's one thing you'd have to consider if the zoning will allow what you want to do there. And, then, I don't know if you've seen the DRI process in the center region. It can be pretty controversial depending on how other municipalities feel.
That's why I hired John.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And John's been through it. Yeah, Frank.
Yeah, I would have a couple questions. First one is, do we have, how much is this going to increase the source? Is it a bump out or is it a chunk? I mean, and does it have to go over the top of the mountain where the ski slope starts? Where would that growth boundary and sewer service area, how far would it have to be extended? And like I said, is it just like we had up here with just a little bump out, or is it something that's pretty significant? I guess is one of my questions.
Yeah.
And the second question, since this was built a long time ago, and I don't think there's any high value water in there, but are we going to run into the same thing we ran when they did the Elks, where remember we had to make adjustments to the riparian buffers because now they come back and got a bite of the apple and had to, if you remember that property, because it brought a lot of those things back in that weren't there when they first built it. So that's my only two questions, but I agree with Bruce, we might as well go ahead and give it a go. I mean, I think we need to vitalize that property,
It would be a bump out. It would be a kind of an island of the growth boundary. You wouldn't be expanding the growth boundary up Bear Meadows Road. If you look at the sewer service map, it's actually hatched out now because it is certified by UHAA. And as far as there are streams here that are going to impact the development of this project.
It would be the same kind of bump out that we did on the church?
Calvary.
The Calvary Church?
No,
because that went through.
That was right next to.
That went through this whole DIY process.
Yeah, that grew from the existing growth area, so it was contiguous to it. This one would be like Alaska or Hawaii.
Were you involved in that one too, John?
Oh, yeah.
Well, okay. The current capacity of the sewer line is 6 inch?
It's a 6-inch, we would have to replace it with an 8.
Okay, that was the question. Because, and where does that line intersect somewhere down in the Bear Meadows area?
Yes, it goes into the Bear Meadows subdivision.
In the subdivision there? Is there a right of way in there ready for a line? For a new line?
Yes.
You have any idea how many EDUs a thing like this would generate?
Not off the top of my head, but it's not going to be significant.
I would have thought it would have been quite high because of the intended use of receptions and those kind of things.
I'm talking relatively.
Okay.
You know, it's not going to be like a 500 lot subdivision.
Yeah, I don't know how EDUs are calculated on parcel use because it's not used all the time.
Yeah, UHA has their own way of calculating.
Yeah.
That we have to follow.
Intriguing concept.
Yeah.
I think, I like the idea.
It's really going
I've always,
to be a boom to, benefit to the township.
right, I've always been concerned about the viability of that area, and, it's hung on pretty impressively over the years through some hard times, despite the fact some
Where do you
pretty...
put hotel room?
No hotel.
What do you mean? Where do you put the hotel room?
No, that's across the street.
Oh, that's rural commercial is what the...
That's an interesting tangential question. We're dealing with the new highway. How does that road intersect with what would be the access road that's being built to get to that place?
From what I've seen, the bridge would be going over pretty close to where Bear Meadows intersects with 322 right now.
Okay.
It's kind of a unique geometry that
They didn't show us a lot of detail on where that intersects with Bear Meadows
Well,
Road.
what they said, the jog's coming back in. You remember how it used to jog? Well, they said they were gonna go back to doing that and have that exit for this point up, so it'll be.
it's going to jog right under the bridge.
Right, it's gonna be basically onto the 2-lane. It's not gonna be on
And that'll be a few years.
Well, yeah, I like it. Any other board members that haven't said anything?
We're all looking at you.
Look, everyone's looking at me.
Have you, I mean, are you, just, they're pulling the board, basically, because
like
we
this
have to
idea.
support it.
I liked it when I pulled it out. I liked it now, and I highly support this.
Okay.
Does this start with a formal support letter from Harris Township to somebody? What's the next step of this process?
Mark can better explain the DRI process.
Okay, Mark?
Yeah, so a few things. First off, to answer one of Frank's questions, the entire property would need to be brought into the growth boundary. That's how DEP has basically told us we needed to do any expansions in the past. So one of the things with the DRI process now is that you have to have a development agreement that goes along with it. So it basically helps to ensure that, whatever the general form might approve a DRI for is what ultimately we get built. And this property is adjacent to the growth boundary. Part of the Biddle farm down here is adjacent to the part of the property where the go-kart track and things like that are located. So it would maintain that consistency. But the next step in this process would be for the ownership group here to put together their DRI application and submit it to the CRPA for a completeness check. At that point, once it's deemed complete, it would come back to the township for a full analysis. So at that point, you can send it to the planning commission, have them provide you with their feedback on it, and then ultimately it comes back to the board for you to decide whether or not you support it moving forward in the regional process. So really tonight's presentation was just to give Mr. Lincoln here at least some level of comfort of whether or not you're interested in considering the request, but he needs to still put together that DRI application and come back to the board later.
There's no other adjacent property that should be included if we're doing DIY to get both included rather than... Bear Meadows is on public sewer now, John?
Yes.
And the property across from Bear Meadows is on public sewer? Whatever, what is that?
Yes, that is.
Across the street
From what?
from Bear Meadows.
Laurel Hills.
Yeah, Laurel Hills. That's the public sewer?
Okay. Yes.
I just hate to have you do one and not think about, possibly including another one. Because
So the Biddle property, Mark, is in the growth boundary.
Okay.
So I corrected me that it would be contiguous to the growth boundary.
Right across, there's a tree row on the right side of the driving range. That is our line between Biddle's field, his hay field there is in the growth boundary.
Is there sewage provided now to the stuff on the far right, the miniature golf course and the go-kart and that? Is that sewered?
Yeah, the sewer line actually runs up through the driving range and connects up through to, so that everything on the property is connected.
Okay.
All right.
What kind of motion you need of action?
Well, we just need nods of the head if we're gonna,
Consensus agreement.
if we think it's a good idea and we're gonna be willing to support you in this.
Yes.
So, yes.
Especially when they put that
Quick
column
answer.
down.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, now we're on to proposed ordinance 369, the non-conforming amounts of parking. So a public hearing was held on this earlier, so at this point, we don't need to read the whole thing again, but it's time for the board to chime in if we have any concerns, and we can approve this or not. So, board members?
The only question I had, and that was probably answered, is what happens if a business can provide no parking? Is anything that included in there somewhere? I either read over it and didn't see it, or is that just another question we raised?
I think that's a separate issue. And I think we have had some conversations with the township solicitor on how to address that. And Mark's been doing most of the talking with the solicitor on this issue.
Good question, Eddie. You just wanted to know if the property has no parking?
Yeah.
Well, the property doesn't have any ability to provide parking. People register that nonconformity based on whatever the current use of the property is. And that was the example that was in the agenda language, where if you had a retail use that had, 2,000 square feet, and they were required 8 spaces, but they don't have any spaces, under our current ordinance, they can come in and register that now. The difference with this ordinance is if they ever change the use to something that requires less parking, they don't lose that nonconformity. And the idea behind this, when the planning commission was asked to do it, was to basically take those properties who have no ability to provide parking or a very limited ability to provide parking, to give them at least some confidence that if they change their use in the future, they're not going to be restricted to go back to the use they once had. So basically, if they don't have the ability to provide parking, they can register what they have now as a non-conformity and utilize that for future changes of uses on the property.
Can a business consume their backyard to accommodate 8 spaces?
Well, they have to meet our impervious standards, so they couldn't take up their entire backyard in the village district. It depends on what district they're in. They may have a higher impervious limit.
So they play off each other then, don't they?
They do.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Clearly, this is something I'm extremely passionate about because I have a business in this district, and I have comments from, I hear comments all the time about this. This in particular, like I said before, I find this an okay start, but I am extremely against the fact that you sit there and say, where's that one line? It says, the owner would need to provide the difference between the requirement and the registered nonconformity. Well, I guess I don't understand why even bother with that line, because there's no way to do it, because we don't have shared parking, we don't have anything. And like I said, I have a packet of notes that were handed to me by Carl of all the parking committees and all the committees to talk about these things over the years. And do you know, not one thing was ever considered, not one. of any recommendations. If you look at the small area plan, there are recommendations in there that are not even considered. What was the point? What was the point when we spent almost a year? And the one thing that we recommended most was the shared parking, so that these non-conforming properties can have a chance. We're not even giving them a chance. I mean, we say, oh yeah, you can do this, but what happens when somebody's ready to retire and somebody has an office and nobody wants an office, somebody wants this or somebody wants that? They're not coming here. It's completely unfair to the people that you have, because you're not giving, like I said, why even put that sentence in there? It's just, and it's, like I said, it's something I'm very passionate about. It's something I hear about, which clearly I don't think anybody else in this board hears about. Like I said, if we just added that one little thing, I would have no problem with this as a start. I think it's a good start if we just had that one little thing added. I think Robin would agree with me on that. She was on the parking committee as well. So I just...
Now, by the one little thing, you mean a shared parking?
The shared parking.
Yeah.
There's plenty of room for shared parking. There's shared parking on my property.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, just giving somebody that opportunity.
Okay. Correct.
Yeah, I was on that parking committee. I was the liaison from the board. And I think both of you sat on those meetings with me. And I think I said it at least the first meeting and probably 2 or 3 times throughout that process, that this is great, but it doesn't guarantee that we're going to take any action. I remember I said that several times. I said, we can present this, but we may not be able to take actions. Now, as far as the shared use goes, and you might, because I haven't been to the planning commission for a while and haven't, but we're still waiting on the distance. If I'm remembering correctly, we had they were talking about 750, 1,000, whatever, but they were supposed to come back with that distance of how far away from your business you could do shared parking. I think we're willing to do shared parking, but I don't think we've seen the total package of what that number is. And that's where I assume that's where we're at, and I haven't heard anything different from it.
Yeah, I think the planning commission did talk about that for several months, and my recollection, and Mark can correct me if I'm wrong, that my recollection is that they did send back some information to the board, and the board discussed it for several months and sort of came to an impasse. And it sort of got left there. That's why staff switched from that topic to this topic to try and get something done on the recommendations from the parking committee. It's always been anticipated that we would come back to the shared parking and the off-site parking as part of the total amendment, but the board and the planning commission did talk about, I don't know if you remember the maps that Mark came up with 500 feet from the center of the diamond, 1,000 feet. We talked about potentially parking on the other side of the highway. We had all those discussions. We talked about sidewalks and lighting and things like that.
I thought we sent it back to them to give us a final number.
I think that Mark wants to.
Go ahead, Mark.
Sorry. No, actually, I was just clearing my throat, but I'm thinking you can hear me now, which is very good. I must have fixed my microphone this year. This is great. So, no, Todd's entirely right. It was, the board talked about, I think up until December of 22, you did come to an impasse, and it really was over pedestrian access and how far the distance should be, because there was a bunch of different options thrown out. Ultimately, you waited until that joint meeting in April to kind of talk about the entire report with the Planning Commission, and you gave this direction to the Planning Commission to work on this particular issue because it was definitely something I think that rose to the surface. To Prince's question, that line was included in the ordinance because the Planning Commission recognized that as they work on trying to implement the remainder of that report, at least looking at the overall zoning for the village itself, that they were going to have to look at how to do off-site and shared parking. But they're doing a comprehensive analysis of the entire zoning for the village area, not the village district that was defined in the 1970s, but the whole village area, kind of taking it down to no zoning at all and coming back with a recommendation of how it should be zoned based on what's here now and kind of the goals of the small area plan and other things. So I think ultimately that discussion about off-site and shared parking will come back. It certainly can come back sooner if you want, but I know that's going to have to be part of this discussion that the PC is going through right now.
No, I had something else, I have a question, and I think I know the answer, but I want to make sure. The way you've described and the examples you've used, you're saying that if I have 8, where I've got the permit to have the 8 non-conforming lots, and somebody only needs 2 on there, and I sell the property, those 8 go away, or the next guy comes in only has 2, the 8 stay.
Right.
Right. Now, my question is, let's say I have a property and I have 2 non-conforming, and a new owner comes in that needs 8. Can he come back and refile that non-conforming to go from 2 to 8?
No, I don't think it works that way.
That's my problem with the whole
Well, see,
thing.
I think if you're gonna do it, you should be able to do it both directions.
That's my problem with the whole thing, because you can't, that's what this line says. It says right here, where was it? If the amount of required parking for a new use or uses does not exceed 8 spaces, the owner would need to provide the difference between the requirement, but you can't do that. So, and I've been saying it all along, you've got a 2,000 square foot property here that's an office, a 2,000 square foot property here that's a cafe. You've got the most parking that you need over here, and neither has any parking. This can never be anything more than an office. You can't sell it to somebody who wants to make a cafe. You can't sell it to somebody who wants to make it a retail space. You can't sell it for anything. So, I mean, I just think that this is extremely harmful to these buildings and these people. It's not fair. It's ridiculous to pass this without passing some kind of shared parking. And immediately, this is, I mean, if you're going to do this, shared parking becomes more of an emergency. Because, I mean, people want to retire, people want to sell, people want to do things, they want to move around. And you are literally, everybody's hands are tied right now. We're waiting. We've been waiting for 2 years now for something, longer than that, for something, you know? And I just think that this is absolutely absurd, that we've got this problem with these buildings, and we've been waiting this long for some kind of action. So,
I move that we refer to this to the planning commission to introduce some wording into it for shared parking.
thank you.
And so we have something to look at.
I second that.
Does the new township lot fall into a shared parking definition?
No.
No, because it's municipal property.
No, I think what the Board of Supervisors has said all along is they want to reserve this parking for use by the entire village. They don't want to parse off a certain number of spaces to other properties because that in effect makes them unavailable.
So we could suddenly end up consuming all 27 of our spaces by the addition of the...
There's one,
Hang on.
there's only one thing I'd like to mention, maybe to forward to the planning commission as well. I agree that the shared parking should only be on the areas that provides proper public access with sidewalks, because that was a big discussion. So I would like that mentioned in my thought with this.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, we got a motion, more comments, so I have comments on that. If we don't pass this, what we have right now is actually more restrictive than this. And so passing this is a step in the right direction, and we should definitely look more into shared parking. But as you brought up sidewalks, that was part of the discussion. Back then, we didn't want to allow a distance that would put somebody, you know, in a position where we could be sued because they stumbled over a bad sidewalk. So we need to you know, that was one of the steps we wanted to take, get the sidewalks all upgraded so we could come up, you know, so they're safe routes to the shared parking possibilities. So by putting this back to the planning commission right now, you're actually making things worse by keeping what's there than allowing this to go, happen, and then get back into the shared parking as soon as we can, as soon as reasonable. But again, that requires us to do some work.
It's been 2 years.
Yeah.
2 years, what's reasonable?
What?
If we don't do this, we're right back to where we started.
Right, exactly.
I
And
did.
right now,
I seconded.
yeah, well, that's to put it back to the planning commission.
It's been 2
And-
years.
And it'll be another 2 years.
But if
before
you
comes
put it back to the I'm warning you, if you put it back to the planning commission, you're worse off than you are if you pass this. That's what I'm saying. You know, at least this gives some opportunity, and we can, you know, look into that in the future. But Ken, you know, the planning commission is busy, they've got a lot on their plate. They're gonna say, you know, they're gonna roll their eyeballs and say, like, we really worked hard on this, and we can't, we've gotta be realistic about the shared parking thing. Everybody, we're all in favor of it, but we also don't want the township to be in a position of liability. We don't want people to get hurt with poor lighting and poor sidewalks going to their shared parking space.
Seeing as how we do have a motion on the table, my, I don't know what you want to call it, compromise would be this, that we do pass this, because you're right, if we send this back down, we won't see this for another year or two. So let's get this one done, but with that same motion and passing this one, we also send to the planning commission that we're going to expect in the next several months to have language on the shared parking, so we can get that one rolling and get that ordinance done and get the public hearings and get it in. So I think that would be what I would say is pass this one, and then let's also send a strong direction to the planning commission that we want the shared parking moved to the top of the table, and let's get it done.
Basically amending 369.
Well, they can, I don't care how they do that, but, you know, amend 369 or whatever, but let's get this portion through and then come back and do the other.
I think, well, that would be, wouldn't that end up being a separate ordinance, shared parking? You wouldn't even include it with this one.
Approve 369 and come back with a 372 or whatever.
Yeah, so.
I could work with that.
Okay, well then, we have a motion and a second, so my recommendation is to vote that one down and bring in.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay.
You're going to withdraw your second?
I withdraw my second.
Okay. So, somebody.
I'll have to make a motion that we pass ordinance number 369, pass that one, then we'll make a second motion.
And I'll second that.
Okay, any more discussion there? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
We're just voting on this.
Aye. Okay.
I make a motion that we, and I don't know if we need a motion or direction, but I'll make the motion that we instruct the planning commission to move shared parking to the top of their agenda and get it done as soon as possible.
Mark is shaking his head back there, right, Mark?
Which way you shaking your head?
Thank you.
Understood.
Okay. We have
And
a second.
does that have to be a motion, or can we just direct?
Well, I think we should make it a motion.
Okay, I make it a motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion on that.
It's specifically now to get a little more specific in what we're looking at.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well, tell me something.
Oh, well, we want them to look at the shared parking and iron it out and get information back to us so that we can start the ordinance process and get it done.
That's not too ambiguous now, we know what we're like it.
No, Mark's shaking his head, he knows what we want.
Okay. I don't want to go through this again if we pass it with 272.
Okay. No more discussion on that, I hope? All right, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous
very
also.
much.
Okay.
I make a motion,
Good deal.
we approve, move ordinance 370, stormwater management ordinance update.
Second.
Okay. Any more discussion on that?
Can I ask you anything
Have to do it.
significant that you highlighted last month that we need to reinforce?
No. Okay.
FYI for future, just give me a copy of the sheet of the changes.
Yeah, that was
I've already read this thing enough, I think I can recite a lot of it.
Okay. Okay. We're ready for a vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay. Solar power purchase agreement, legal fees. I'm going to just introduce this. We don't have anybody to make a presentation. However, Mark and I are both kind of familiar with what's going on. There was a presentation at the Climate and Sustainability Committee today by Pam Adams about that, and she's at the borough this evening, and somebody else is at the school board this evening, so we don't get anybody. So I don't think I need to read all this. However, because we're all familiar with what's going on, we've heard it before, and we've had discussion on it before. What I'd like to point out from what I understand So the scope of this project was a lot larger than anybody could have possibly anticipated because it's unique. Never been tried before, anywhere close to here at least, with the number of partners. So basically the time required by for legal work was grossly underestimated. And I guess and I don't think anybody gave them tacit approval, but I think the thinking of the attorneys was they were willing to continue working at risk to keep the ball rolling, and because if they hadn't, then we'd be discussing adding this to the budget and delaying it even more. And so I think that's the understanding I got from discussion earlier today. So I will point out that also the over hours in legal fees, the attorneys reduced from 200,000 to 130,000, I guess, as an act of good faith. And what is it, our township, if we were to agree to pay something, what's our number? Yeah.
$400.
$469. Now, the school district, I don't know if they're talking about it this evening too. And my guess is the most sensible thing would be for each municipality or each partner to make a vote on it. And if the partner doesn't agree that they want to pay it, well, who knows what happens then, but I don't think it should be the responsibility of the rest of the partners to make up the difference. I think that's where the at-risk, the attorney's at-risk work would come in to play. Well, you lost, I don't know, is Half Moon even a partner on this right now? They're out. Yeah, so, but if another municipality said no, they weren't paying it, oh well,
Well, the option, start on page 4, the option is to pay the full solicitor amount. And I talked to Randy Brown about this.
You did, huh?
We talked about paying the full, paying a portion, or paying nothing. And my proposal to Randy and the project management team was that we look at number 2, pay a partial amount. I had targeted 50%. And that didn't go very far. I'm not sure what the project management team did with that item. They met last Wednesday. So, and I share your concern with respect to if one of the larger partners, say, let's say Center County, or let's see, the 17. There's a 17,000. What if one of those drop out and don't pay? I don't want the rest of us to have to make up that difference. I sure don't want the school district to assume even more than they're consuming now. Well, that was why I said 50% of nothing.
Right.
So,
Bruce.
Yeah, when we first learned of this project, I was supportive of it because I do think it's something where the future needs to go. I feel like the working group has been in over their head. If I hired a contractor and he told me it was going to cost me $5,000 to upgrade my bathroom, and suddenly I was getting a bill for $288,000, I'd be a little upset. And I'm in favor of paying our bills. I'm fine with paying the full amount that's represented here, but at that point, personally, I think I'm done. It's ridiculous how this has grown, and I'm not confident that we're done yet.
you say you're not confident?
I'm not confident we're done yet. Yeah.
No.
I think we then have to pass that to the project management team. This is last
I'm out. I'm out. I pay our bills, pay the full amount
And you want
that we owe,
to, you want to pull out of the group like
and then I
other-
want to pull out of the group.
Do you want to pull out if there's any more bills, or do you want to pull out just now?
I'm done.
Okay.
I'm done.
I will tell you that I kind of agree with Bruce that we pay that 469, whatever it is, that's our portion, because we did agree to doing that way back a long time ago, and I have no problem paying that 459, but I think a letter needs to go with that 459 and says this is the last money we give you for legal fees, and we are pulling out of this agreement. Because where my turning point was on this agreement was when we did our last energy contract, and we said, we want all green energy. And Mark was able to go out and get us a contract for, I don't know, 18 months, 20, whatever it is, for all green energy, and the difference in the price was like 0.000339 cents. If we can do it on our own, why commit to 15 years of a contract that, how many of you are going to be able to read this and absorb this contract? This contract's going to be a monster. And if you can better believe it's going to say, whoever the other end of the contract is, they win, we lose. So I agree with Bruce. I say we pay our bill and we just say we're done.
Thoughts from anybody else?
I don't know, sober discussion yet?
Oh, sure. Head to the mic, bud, and tell us who you are.
Take the mic to you.
Take it over there.
I'm getting tired of getting up and down. I'm sorry.
Take the mic over.
Good for you.
Mic in my own chair.
Jeez, bud.
Go over there and sit where Mark usually sits.
Well, just a quick comment here. I agree with Bruce and I agree with Dennis here. This has grown out of proportion. If you followed any of the dialogue, we've probably spent up to $1 million on this already. If you counted all the hours, all the times and everything else, we've got $1 million invested in this. And this at-risk money, who's going to pay that? The money has already been spent, but who's going to pay that? The county, they're concerned. The county supervisors, they don't even know. I mean, the county commissioners, they spent money that never approved. So that could be pretty bad up there when it hits the fan up there. Somebody spent that money that was never approved. Now, obviously, we've approved all of our money, which I think we have. I don't know if code has spent money at risk without making sure we get without getting approval. I don't know that. That's to be determined.
Can I clarify something quick?
Yeah.
No, so none of that money that they're billing us for has been approved. It was at risk. So nobody agreed to pay that.
I agree.
Yeah.
But the money has been spent from the county.
The money has, no.
Oh, yes.
No,
yes.
the county hasn't paid any,
well, okay.
No, nobody's paid that bill.
The county has, I think,
paid.
from what I understand, the county has paid money that they did not approve already. How much it is, I don't know.
So the county already did.
They did, yes. But that's my understanding, and that's from what I hear from.
That's the thing, like.
But the issue is, it's a quagmire. And I'm concerned that if we stick with this, we're going to get a black eye on this. We're only a small percentage. I agree. We're small fish in a big pond as far as this goes. But this is never ending. And I think I agree with Bruce and Frank. Pay what you owe now and let's back off. CATA has already backed out. CATA's done. They have said they're not part of this agreement anymore.
They backed out for a different reason, though.
Well, no. Well, I don't know why they backed. They did back out. Period.
Because of federal regulation.
Well, maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. There was still some conversation there, but they backed out. And according to two of their board members I talked about, this didn't help. This whole thing didn't help. So be careful there. And I agree. I think you need to take a look at this and. Maybe 5 years down the line you can jump in again, but it's only going to be a black eye if we don't back out of this.
Your thoughts, Dennis?
Pay the 469 and stay in.
Okay, well, I mean, we need I'm teetering on this. I mean,
I just say pay the 469 and get out.
I mean, so basically, we need a motion. Somebody want to make a motion?
Okay, I'll make a motion that we pay the $469 with an accompanying letter, say that this is the last funds we will pay for legal fees, and we will be dropping out of the solar power purchasing agreement.
I second.
Okay. More discussion? Kind of leaning that way too at this point. We're such a small fish. Yes?
We had a comment online from Jenny Evans. I was just going to read it into the record.
Okay.
If we can achieve the goal of green energy for the township, there is no further need to participate in this agreement. I just want to read that in.
Yeah. All right. Any more discussion? All in favor of that motion? That would include paying the bill and withdrawing from this agreement? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, I don't get it, but. No, you don't get it.
Sorry, bud.
We'll give Robin.
Okay. I know, Deb,
She's better looking. T-shirt. She's better looking. We'll give her. Robin's in it.
let's see. So Deb, you get that? Oh, she's muted. Anyway.
She's looking for elephants.
Oh, there she is. She's lighting up.
I got it, we're good.
Okay, yeah, so
Looking for an elephant.
Dennis was a nay vote on that motion, but, let's see. Yeah, Frank introduced it and Tracy seconded it, right? Okay. Done with that one. Let's see. Okay. Next, letter of support for community solar. So in your packet, there's this letter. I'll read the thing for the public here. On March 26, 2024, the PA State House, with bipartisan support, passed House Bill 1842, which creates a framework for community solar. The bill was referred to the Senate Consumer Protection and Professional Licensure Committee. Community solar project give residents and business owners the choice to subscribe to a local solar installation and earn a credit on their electric bill for their share of the power produced. This provides property owners and tenants with an option for solar energy when their property isn't suited for solar installation. It can help make solar energy more accessible and affordable. At the August 26 meeting, the COG General Forum approved the following two actions as recommended by the Climate Action and Sustainability Committee and Executive Committee. One, to send letters of support for NB-2A to our senators for bipartisan legislation action to increase equitable access to usage of solar energy in Pennsylvania, to forward this item to the COG member municipalities for consideration to send individual letters of support. So the Board of Supervisors should determine if a letter of support for community solar should be sent from the township to our senators, and a draft letter of support is included with the agenda. What do y'all think?
I voted in favor of the general forum sending the letter. I don't see anything to be added by us sending another letter that's identical to that one. It's just, I mean, I know that if I was a senator, I wouldn't be influenced by it. It's just redundant. It's posturing.
I voted against the one at the general forum, and I'll vote against this one for the simple reason is we're not a lobbying organization. We are here to support the people of Harris Township. Our constituents are more than welcome to write letters to these people and lobby for that. But I'm not in here to be a lobby person. I'm here to be an administrator and a legislator. So as far as I'm concerned, this is not me against solar, community solar. I don't think it's our job to do this.
Anybody else? Nothing? Anybody want to make a motion as to doing it or not doing it?
I'll make a motion to do it, we'll vote on it. If you get a second.
I'll second. Let's vote on it.
Okay.
Could die without a second, too.
No, I'm willing to go on record with my opinion.
All right. Okay, any more discussion? Any in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Aye, nay, whatever. That's 4 against. I agree with Frank's interpretation of that. Okay. Resolution 2411, approving a township's minimum municipal obligation for its pension plan for 2025. The township is required by Act 44, the state pension law, to approve by resolution the minimum municipal obligation for the following calendar year. This resolution must be approved by the Board of Supervisors by the last day of September each year. The minimum municipal obligation is estimated to be $53,593.66 for 2025. This estimate is based upon the contribution rates for employees that are eligible for participation in the 401A defined contribution plan. A worksheet that details the contribution for 2025 is included with the resolution. Funds for the contribution will be included in the 2025 operating budget. The township also receives state pension aid every year. The recommendation is to move to approve Resolution 24-11, approving the township's minimum municipal obligation for its pension plan for 2025.
So moved.
Second.
Geez, man, don't give me a chance.
Told you you gotta be on your toes.
Okay, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, that's unanimous. Request to use the Bollesburg Fire Police for the Howard Pumpkin Chunkin' Festival.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. That is, move to approve the use of the Bollesburg Fire Police for the Howard Fire Company Pumpkin Chunkin', I had to say that twice, Fall Festival on October 19th, 2024, from 8 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, manager's report. We're getting there. This is thick packet here. There we go. Manager report. Mark, did you want to point anything out on this or highlight anything?
Yeah, two items I wanted to highlight. The first would be number 7 on the back, which is about the Bollesburg Village Conservancy wanting to use a small area of the new parking lot for a reindeer enclosure. I just wanted to make sure the board didn't have any concerns with that. They are going to have a company come in, they clean up after the reindeer. This would be for the hometown Christmas celebration. So unless you want to talk about it at your meeting next month, we'll just give them the green light to go ahead and plan to do that.
Go. Yeah.
I'm kind of curious why they aren't using the new barn at the museum property rather than the parking lot.
My understanding is that the reindeer has to be on a hard impervious surface.
Yes.
So they have to have it on either asphalt or concrete. And I don't think the board can work for that.
That makes sense.
Does
Okay.
one of them have a red nose by any chance?
You will have it. You'll get a red tree.
The other item I wanted to raise was on number 4, and that was about some complaints we received about short-term rental property in Willowbrook, and I think Tracy wanted to maybe make a few comments about that, but I did want to mention that the Happy Valley Adventure Bureau is putting together a task force to look at short-term rentals, and they're asking for participation from the municipalities. I think mostly to look at regulations to see how people are addressing them, so if you're interested in having me represent the township, or if one of you want to do it, please let me know. But I just wanted to see if there was any interest from the board to do anything based on these emails that you received.
It's on my street, it's the end of my street. The first rental was absolutely horrendous. It's a small split entry home with 3 official bedrooms upstairs, and they're renting it out to 12 people. I mean, the people, I've met the owners, they seem very nice and everything. I think they were shell-shocked after that first rental. I know that there are other properties in Willowbrook, and they actually live there and then rent out for the football games. But, you know, they have some skin in the game because their personal stuff is in these places. So purchasing a house specifically for an Airbnb, I know that I talked to Todd about this. I also talked to Walt Schneider about this. Apparently there are some short-term guidelines that they have passed in other townships that were brought to here, and I wouldn't mind reviewing those at some point.
I agree. I'm quite familiar with the borough one because we have a property there, an Airbnb. And the issue, it's kind of interesting though, when the borough was introducing all this legislation, the legislation can't address issues like what happened in your neighborhood.
Well, I thought that
And
they said
that's
something to
kinda-
me about a permit, like you
Well,
have to get a permit and to have.
Well, you have to get a permit, and I think that one thing that could, I mean, are the owners of that property living at the property or not?
No.
You see,
No, this
that's
was
one of the
bought
things the
solely.
borough does require, that there has to be somebody living there 10 months out of the year. It doesn't mean they can't rent the property, the whole property, for a short-term rental. But somebody has to be living there. It can't just be an Airbnb business. And I think that's something worth looking into, because I'm pretty sure my former neighbor's property ended up being an Airbnb because nobody lives there. People show up every now and then. Now we
I
haven't had
have no
issues.
problems with, no issues with the other ones in the neighborhood, but I think this is the first house that was actually purchased to be an Airbnb.
I think, we have them in the neighborhood and they haven't been a problem. I think we had this situation, if you remember, I think it was up in Crestmont, we had the frat party, and we've not had a major problem, but it seems like now we've got another one. And we kind of said, well, let's just leave it the way it is, but maybe we need to take a look at it and see if there's something we need to do or if there's something we can do. So I don't have a problem with this.
Yeah,
thing.
I would like to have.
What Mark's talking about. I think just take a look at it and see what comes back. Because like I said, this is a second instance and, we don't want, third one's a charm, so I don't know if we want to get there yet. So.
Right, and again, it may or may not be, but I think I think we should at least have a requirement that the home is occupied by somebody
whatever requirement comes down. If it's going to be an Airbnb, it's going to be a business. It needs to have business regulations and business, whatever situation it is. But I think it's something we should look at.
Yeah.
I'm not saying which way to go right now, but I think having Mark go to this bureau, the visitors bureau, and see what they're going to do.
I'd like to know what the regulations are throughout the other townships as well.
Yeah.
Being informed won't hurt.
Yeah.
For sure.
We get informed and then we can figure out whether we need to do something.
I will tell you in the meantime that my neighbors will not tolerate any more shenanigans going on in this place, and I don't care when it is or how it is. I mean, the police will be called every 10 minutes if necessary. So we've already discussed that.
Well, it's no parking in your cul-de-sac. Call the police and have them ticketed.
There is parking in the cul-de-sacs, but you can't block other people's driveways, and you can't park in the middle of the cul-de-sac, and you can't.
Right.
Something else.
If you know who the property owners are, then you should tell them that if they're not good neighbors, we might get more restrictive.
I'm not thrilled about this situation at all.
I get it. I mean, fortunately, whatever's going on with my neighbors has always been quiet, and we haven't had more than a few cars there at once and no noise. I mean, anybody that runs an Airbnb should look at who they're renting it to, because they're rated, renters have ratings.
Well, the bigger issue is
Yeah.
I can call up individually. I can go on Airbnb and I can get a place in New York. They don't know me from Adam, and I go up there and my family comes. The next thing I know, we tear the place up and I get a bad rating. But wait, next time my mother is the one who does the renting, and so she has no rating, and she sits there and sends a little email.
Yeah, don't rent it to anybody with no rating.
I think we're heading in the right direction.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're assigning Mark to do that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep, he's gonna go. Sounds good. Anything the board wants to bring up on the manager's report? Okay, hearing none, we'll move right on to the approval of vouchers.
I make a motion that we approve voucher number 2024-07 for $313,862.65.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Okay, COG committee reports. Executive committee, basically everything that was on the COG agenda last month was discussed, plus a little extra time on the on this debacle about the extra billing for the solar power purchasing agreement, and that's about it. HR did not meet. Climate action and sustainability met today, and other than Other than that, the same discussion, there wasn't really much else. So, facilities, et cetera, Mr. Hameister.
Okay, we met on September 3rd. Main topic was the Patton Township Fire Station HVA system, and we ended up with another long report. The consensus was that we move with replacing one of the air handling units now, and then investigate moving into a more expensive one next year. So it'll come up in the budget process. Land use, basically talked about the comprehensive plan study that's currently underway. And we found out that we've received $190,000 for local planning on the MPO. To be, and that's the first successful grant we've gotten since we've hired the grant writing person. So good news on that one. Solar power purchasing agreement, no need to discuss.
Okay. Nothing else?
Nope.
All right, let's see. So, Bruce, all your park stuff.
Yeah, Parks Capital did not meet, Parks Governance did not meet. Waiting for our new executive director to get up to speed before we finalize those recommendations.
There's two of those.
The Park Authority met, and I'll just share a few things with you here. One is, I've asked for, and I've been told that they're working on kind of a spreadsheet showing for each of their programs and stuff, what the level of support is from fees, what the level of support is from donations and advertising, and what the level of support is coming out of the general park budget. So I think we're moving in the right direction. I have before me here the fee policy for 2025. Again, they're looking at activities, programs, special events, camps. Staff must calculate an individual budget for each program and during the planning process. That covers, the budget should include all direct costs. On instructor fees, facility rentals, custodial fees, supplies, equipment, transportation, staff time invested in the actual physical operation of the program, vehicles, rentals, tickets, on and on. Program costs don't cover indirect costs to the agency, staff costs, electricity, heat, vehicle management, insurance, and such like that. They are identifying for each type of program a minimum and maximum enrollment, and if the minimum enrollment is exceeded, there's the ability to go on. If they're one person short, we'll talk about it. Pricing models, instructional programs are, if it's above, the minimum is to break even. If you're above the minimum, then there's going to be a positive variance in the income coming in. They're anticipating for instructional programs, 5% positive variance for youth programs and 15% for adult programs over the bank break-even costs. Youth sports leagues, 10% margin positive. Active adult centers, no positive margin, but remember the active adult center, actually that's active adult instructional programs. They simply cover their costs. Sports teams, leagues, tournaments, a 20% margin. Some other things in here I noted that I could go on with the other ones. Community-based events are zero margin, but the staff is expected to cover at least 50% of the expenses through sponsorships, donations, in-kind services, or through positive money advanced by the other programs. And last thing I'll mention is residents who aren't one of the 5 participating municipalities, their costs will be 50% higher than resident costs for these programs. So I think they're trying.
This is a good thing, this is good.
So, and I got a lot more here, but that's the gist of what direction they say they're heading.
That's a good start.
But you, Bruce, you said the non-resident fees are 50% higher than,
Right, so if the resident fee is $10, a non-resident will pay 15.
okay, no, that, they've increased that, I think.
That's, I don't know.
It's higher.
It's higher. Yeah, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, I think it has, I'm looking at the emissions now for the fee history for the pools. But yes, anyways, that's the direction we're headed.
So that's all you have for reports?
Yeah.
Okay,
And if you want the whole thing, I'd be happy to provide it to you.
that's okay. All right, Frank?
Okay, I'm gonna
Finance.
start at the bottom. MPO did not meet. State College Area Connector, we had the public meeting, and for anybody that wants, anybody wants to see it, the maps that they had up there, those long scroll maps, we do have copies of them here.
Full length?
They're not rolled out, but they're all rolled up in there. We do have them here at the township. If anybody wants to look at them and see what the groups are at, we've got them. Finance Committee, we meet tomorrow morning, and we're gonna start our finance meetings. Guys, I'm just not real comfortable where we're at right now with this. I did get the budget around Thursday or Friday. I put 2 or 3 days into it. I need another 2 or 3 days, and that's just for the first 2. I'm looking at things like what Bruce said. You know, their increase of revenue over expenditures is about 4%, is what they're at thing. And that sounds great, except that for programs, maintenance, and administration, our contributions are going up 25, 26, and 4%. Our contributions are going up by double digits, but yet what they're projecting is they're only going to see a 4% increase in the overall. So I'm concerned about that. You know, there's on the administrative section of it that we looked at, the parking lot repavement is still in there at $130,000. And I 4 out of the 6 municipalities on the CIP comment said, don't do it, postpone it a year or 2, but yet they just put it right back on there and didn't do anything. Concession revenue is, the whole revenue for their projecting is $3,887, with a total operating loss for the park and rec of $108,000. There's 2 mobile carts they have? Yeah, that's with the 2 mobile carts. They paid $17,000 for those 2 mobile carts, and they're projecting a total revenue of $40,000 and a profit of $3,800. Now, I don't know how you look at payback, but that's a pretty terrible payback.
And say it again.
In other words,
revenue of $40,000.
$40,000 with a profit of $3,887. That's gross profit margin. So basically, it's still, and I agree with Bruce, they're trying, but I don't see anything on this. The one thing that from reading this and looking at last year's budget, when I started to read through this, you know, as townships, and Bud's told me this a million times, that we do have to participate, we do get a bang for our buck. But where I come in and I'm having a problem, how should I say, making things come out is, we provide the parks, we provide all the capital, we're providing those things. But then when I look here's the summer activities. Now, and I think I might have read this to you before. We've got June bug yoga, 3 to 5 years. We got June bug yoga, 6 to 8 years. I wonder how many kids attended. We got intro to circus arts. Well, I mean, come on, why are these programs? I mean, I understand that we want to do it, and they're talking about we got to pay for the natatorium. They want these indoor programs. We provide the parks. We provide the facilities. We don't need to compete with the YMCA and have all these programs. Yeah, we can have programs, but we can have programs that are meaningful. In addition to what Bruce said, I want to know how many participants in each one of those programs. I want to know, did we have 10? Did we have 100? They say some of them have waiting lists, some are low. Well, okay, which ones? Because if I'm the director and I'm only getting 1 or 2 kids and I'm paying, $50,000 for 2 kids, well, that program ain't gonna last. but I don't think that's happening. They go by who's there and what program they want to run. So I have some
Right.
questions there.
But this is what he just talked about, that they're going into right now.
I understand that.
Okay.
He's working on it for one direction, I'm working on it for
Well,
another
I
direction.
see them as just the same, I'm sorry.
Yeah. But I, you know, I look at, I'm just not, financial services, direct cost, $70,000. We have people in there in the accounting, but yet we're still paying $70,000 to get our payroll done. And we have all this software we have to buy. You know, there's just so much stuff like that in there that it's growing exponentially. You know, the administrative payroll was up 15% again this year.
Did they look into other payroll services? 'Cause they-
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. All I know is I'm seeing these numbers and they're becoming big numbers.
That should be-
So where I'm standing at with it is, as far as the budget, I want to see more. I'm not convinced of where we're at right now, and I'm not looking forward to the next 2 weeks because we're going to start these process. And it's going to be, I'm not going to, and I know Half Moon and Ferguson and some of these guys are going to be very adversarial. So I'm going to try to stay calm and cool, but ask the right
How
questions.
many employees are there?
Last I heard was over 100. Over 100 employees that called.
Yeah.
And again,
I have another,
no, I think that's full-time. I think part-time summer is more than that, because they have a bunch of lifeguards and stuff like that, summer counselors, and I don't think that includes them. In fact, that number's probably higher.
I have a question. Does COG pay their own salaries, or does it come out of?
What we pay, it comes out of.
So
what
it
we
comes
pay.
out, well, I'm sorry, does Code pay their own salaries? or
Yes,
does it come
Code
out of-
pays their own
okay.
salary. They are a
Individual,
enterprise.
okay.
But here's where I'm coming from with it, and where I'm taking a stance is what, I think the system is broken. You know, we said all our comments, and we said, hey, you know, we don't want this, or we don't like this, and that's why I said the other week, we should just not even do a whole list of comments, just say, nope, yep, nope, because they come back with something to everybody. And like I said, 4 out of the 6 municipalities said don't pave the parking lot, but yet there it sits right in the budget for $130,000. So I think that the system's broke, and we've got to fix it. And we've got a new guy right now, and I think it's an opportunity to look at it. And if the way to fix it is to say, we're going to vote down this year's budget, and we'll start over and get a process versus a budget for next year. And I don't know how that's going to shake out. I can tell you right now, Half Moon and Ferguson are going to probably vote no. I would bet money on that. I would put some money on that.
Well, I hope in your sessions that you vote down individual items. If you say there's 4 municipalities that don't want to pave the parking lot, then items should just be out of there already.
It was already done. It should have been out. It never went into this. It should have never went in.
Yeah, then take it out.
They didn't take it out. They just left it alone.
Take it out.
If you vote to take it out, it's got to come
Well,
out.
we will. We will.
I feel like when they send around the program plan with the comment sheet, we're just wasting our time.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
Well, I go back to the whole thing is, are we one cog, or are we, the biggest
Okay.
decide?
This happened last month and it happened before, but this is committee reports. We're not having a whole discussion
Sure,
on
I agree
everything
with
that's
that.
going on. So
That's what's
let's
happening,
keep
where
it,
we're coming
you know.
Well, can I ask you a question about that? Like, I understand that, but if I have questions about what am I allowed to ask that? And when
Well,
is the
sure, you can
appropriate
ask,
time?
but we don't want to start, like pontificating too much on what we think about this or what we think about that. This is informational, what happened at the meetings.
The only thing I want from you guys is,
can't write
am I on the
it.
right path? Am I taking the right thought process to this,
Well,
to those meetings?
Something like a parking lot that we've already discussed and we don't think it needs to be done, yeah. And I think you have a pretty good sense of how we all feel, but, just everybody remember, we're representing our township, not necessarily our own personal views.
Right,
So
and that's where I'm coming from right now, is because our township, a little increase in COG is significant for us.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah, so.
I get
No, I
that.
agree with that. I agree with what I agree with that, though, that it's our township, and this is our township, and I think that we spend way too much time.
All right, let's move on. Your turn, Tracy.
Oh, I don't have anything to say, except we met, of course, we have to approve the cars that we weren't supposed to approve, the car and the truck we really weren't supposed to approve for code, but, you know, I don't really have too much of a say anyways. I feel like I'm absolutely useless.
Well, again, I think I think the cars were necessary. They were supposed to be included in the original amount, but the prices, you know this, that they ended up being more expensive, and they need it. They need a truck.
Well, I understand that, but my problem, like I brought up over and over again, why the Ford Escapes? Why these trucks? Why are we not looking? We deserve the best that we can get, and the best that we can get costs less than these cars. And why are we not looking for the best that we can get as far as, you know, longevity? And so that's the problem that I brought up, and that's the problem I have. Is that we need to spend, regardless of what happens, everything that the code spends is taxpayer money. I paid a heck of a lot for my
permits.
Yes,
yeah.
For the house. That is my money that goes into them that they're spending on cars that I find inferior right now.
Sure. Well,
so it is my
they claim they have get good service out of these Ford Escapes, and you know the plug-in ones, they're hardly using any gas. You know, I had a rental inspector come to my property across the street, and he said he hasn't put gas in his car for months.
Yeah, I understand, and that's fine, and I agree with the hybrids, you know. But I mean, the Toyota hybrid of RAV4 is cheaper than an Escape, and
I don't think so.
well, it was the last time Frank looked at it.
I don't think you're going to get that through CoStars.
I guess I don't really care about CoStars if we can get better deals elsewhere.
Stick to your budget.
Okay.
Stick to your budget, I agree with that. That's what should have happened.
Yeah, but like I said,
Well,
that's what managers do.
unfortunately, the need wasn't, the budget wasn't enough for the need, and that's why they appealed to that.
Then you manage better.
Anyway.
Buy it in January.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's all management.
All right.
Okay.
Do I hear a motion for?
Move we adjourn.
on the executive?
Adjournment.
Okay. We're out of here. Thank you. Thank you, Tina.
You're just gonna have to pay attention.